Okay, guys, thank you for coming to my channel, Life by Jake. Today I have a special guest in the building. His name is Coach John Banks. Why don't you go ahead and say hi to the people? Tell them a little bit about yourself, where you're
Hello,
from.
everybody. Thanks, Jake, for inviting me on this episode of your program.
Mhm.
My name is John Banks. As Jake has already said, I am originally from Detroit, Michigan,
Mhm.
but I've lived in a bunch of different places, including the East Coast, West Coast, the British Virgin Islands,
Mhm.
and now Panama. Now my wife and I are living in Colombia, in
Nice,
a small town about 3 hours southwest of Medellin called Jardín.
nice, nice, nice. In today's topic, we're going to be talking about marriage and some possible appropriate consequences we can use for the spouses that don't include just walking away all the time or ending in divorce or something like that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Coach John has been gracious enough to bless us with his advice, so he may want to broaden some things as he goes, but we'll just play it by ear. So since we're talking about marriage today, I want to find out how long you've been married,
My
Coach.
wife and I have been married 31. Well, in a few months it'll be 32 years. So
Wow, wow.
we've
Hey,
got
hey,
a few miles
congratulations,
under our
congratulations.
belt.
Hey, that's an accomplishment.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this is a bonus question. I don't even know what just popped in my mind. How many times have you thought about killing each other? No comment. Hey, Coach, no comment.
Well, let me just reframe the question a little bit. Every marriage has its moments when the spouses either don't understand or don't agree with each other.
Right, 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 right.
And
Okay.
sometimes the intensity can be low, and sometimes the intensity can kind of ratchet up a bit.
Right.
But
Okay.
as long as both of us still end up alive, then I think we're okay.
It's a success, right?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell the audience a little bit how you guys met?
Oh, that's a funny one. Um, we met when we were living in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
which was several years after I graduated from school in Detroit and moved out there. And one of the things that was a big part of my life at that time was I was a leader of a Boy Scout troop.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we met, Aisha and I met the day that she brought her then 12-year-old son
Hmm.
to join our troop.
Mm.
And if you hear her tell the story, it was love at first sight
On whose part?
on her part.
Okay, okay.
Because I had a rule
Yeah.
that had worked successfully for many years, which is I never mess around with the mothers of the boys that I'm leading, because that
Okay.
could only
Okay.
create complications.
Right.
And so she was just one of many mothers that came and brought their sons and
Mm.
enrolled them or came to support events that we that we hosted.
Okay.
But her story is that that evening she went home and
Mm.
told her then roommate that she had met the man that she was going to marry. Now, of course, I knew
Mm. So
nothing
she knew the
about this.
first day.
She knew the first day.
Okay.
Now she tells people that I was slow. It took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah.
And she tends to be very spontaneous. That's her nature.
Right.
I tend to be very deliberate. That's my
Uh-huh.
nature. And those are two things that haven't changed in all these 30 some years. I'm still deliberate. She's
Yeah.
still spontaneous.
So let me make sure I understand. You're saying that that same day she knew that you were the one for her.
That same day.
Okay, so how long did it take you to catch up? When did you realize she was the one for you?
I started noticing that there was something going on. Let's see, this was March. So about 2 months later, it was our then 12-year-old son's birthday. And there was going to be a get together at their home
Mhm.
one evening. And she asked if I wanted to stop by. And so I did.
Uh, uh,
And um, at some point, all the kids in the party took off to go to a sleepover at someone else's house. And the
right.
two of us ended up being there, and we ended up talking until like 3, 4 in the morning.
Uh-huh.
Um, And that's when things
Oh,
sort
3,
of,
4 in the morning. Oh yeah, that's a little bit more than just. You're right.
yeah.
That's some bonding, some real bonding going
Yeah,
on.
so we had a lot of quality conversation time.
Good.
And so that was sort of like the beginning of the process as far as I was concerned.
Okay.
Um, and then a couple months later, it was her birthday, and then things started to move forward a little further forward at that point.
Ah,
But
okay.
it was still an issue for me because, like I said, I still had this rule, and I asked her about that at one point. And she's, that because I said, I don't mess with mothers of boys that are in my troop, and her response was, remember, she's really spontaneous. Well, what troop should I move him to?
Hey, she had a plan, right? She was like, okay, if
Clearly,
that's your rule, I can respect it, but this ain't gonna stop what we're trying to do. Okay, good.
yeah. So it took a while. A couple months later, I went to Detroit, had some conversation with some folks who have been an important part of my life spiritually from forever. And so I had some conversations with them, and it helped me kind of sort things out a little bit
Okay.
and get comfortable with something that was so very different from what had been my practice for so many years. But things really solidified that following December. I always went home for Christmas. And that particular Christmas, I went home and my father passed away.
Sorry to hear
And
that. Rest in peace.
when that happened, I called her to let her know. And I invited her to come to be a part of his homegoing celebration. And at the end of that homegoing celebration is when I asked her to marry me. So,
Okay, and that was how long after you guys met?
so we met in March, and I guess it was New Year's Eve when I asked her to marry me. So
A little under a
that's
year?
a little less than a year, so about
Okay.
9 months.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool.
And we decided to get married that following April. So a year and a month from the time we met to the time we got married.
Awesome. Okay, cool. That'll work. And now, do you think, what I was going to ask you, do you think it's important for couples to have non-negotiables in a marriage?
I absolutely do. And here's where I think a lot of young men, since we're talking to a male audience, um, maybe don't do all that they should do in terms of preparing for being in a long-term relationship. And so I, I would like to, as we're talking today, include both men who are already in a committed relationship, whether long-term friendship or marriage, as well as men who may be not in a long-term relationship who are maybe thinking about preparing themselves for a relationship like that.
Okay.
Because I think the underlying question that we're talking about is relational toxicity, how to avoid it in the first place so that it does not get to the point that where it ends up in a breakup
Right.
or a divorce.
Okay.
And so I think there are things that when you talk about non-negotiables, yes, absolutely, I believe there are and there should be. One of the challenges, I believe, is that as men, we don't tend to be as verbal about what we need and what we require in a relationship.
Okay.
Women, I find, tend to be very clear about what they want, what they need, and they tend to be very verbal about it. They'll put it out there right away. When I was much younger, people would ask me a question about how I would manage a relationship. And I told them I would expect a woman who I would marry to simply know what my needs are, what my expectations are, what my requirements are. And that was crazy.
Sounded good.
I didn't know it sounded good, but it was crazy.
Right.
And so one of the things that I think that we don't do well enough as men is invest the time in really understanding who we are. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose?
Mm-hmm.
What do I require?
Got it. Okay.
And in connection to that, what are the things that I like, that I'd like to have, things that I really strongly prefer this
Mm-hmm.
way rather than that way? And what are the things that are like absolutely non-negotiable gotta haves?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
let me give you an example of a
Mm-hmm.
like. Where we're living right now is a place, it's a farm territory just outside of this little village called
Mm-hmm.
Hardin.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my preference,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that my wife really likes. I'm willing to negotiate on that and say, okay, well, I really like the city, you really like the country. Maybe we'll do some city and some country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So neither one of us has it exactly the way we personally prefer it all the time, but we have some of both because we're respecting each other's preferences.
Okay, that's good.
But there are some things that are like non-negotiable. I cannot live with a woman who I cannot trust.
Mm.
Period.
Speak on it.
So that's a non-negotiable.
Right.
And so if I got found myself in a situation where I was in a relationship, hopefully not a marriage, but a relationship where I found that I literally could not trust this woman, I would have to say, no, this is not going to work. Well, ideally, it would be better before I got too far into a relationship to have had a conversation with this woman so she is clear about what are the niceties for me, what are the things I prefer, and what are the things that are non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been a dialogue, so I would know the same things about her. What are the niceties? What are the preferences? What are the non-negotiables? So that we could look at them side by side and say, oh yeah, these are a good fit or not.
Okay.
And a lot of times, because we as men get into a relationship based on what we see, because we tend to be very visual,
Mm-hmm.
and we see a woman who looks attractive to us, and because she appears attractive to us, then that is oftentimes a basis for progressing, moving a relationship forward,
Mm-hmm.
when we really haven't invested the time to understand who this woman is, what are her likes, strong preferences, and non-negotiables, how do they compare with mine, and are they compatible?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so if you are not in a committed relationship already,
Mm-hmm.
then I would really encourage a young man to invest the time in figuring out, who am I, what matters to me, what are my what are things that are nice to me, what are strong preferences, what are non-negotiables to me,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to articulate those quickly,
Okay. Good.
and be ready to advocate for yourself about those preferences, rather
Right.
than rather than just internalizing it, and
Communicating them.
yeah, communicate. So it's better to communicate, maybe even over communicate, because a lot of times as men we tend to kind of internalize stuff, that the feeling kind of stuff about us.
Mm-hmm.
We are um, our culture trains us to be the not so much the feeling people, but the strong person. And we're not supposed to have feelings. Well, we do. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we box them up until the point that we can't contain it anymore, and then it explodes and turns into separation or a breakdown of the relationship. When if there had been some communication earlier on, it may very well not have escalated to that point. And
Okay.
that's the thing that I think we want to pay attention to.
Okay. Because what I hear from men that I talk to, some friends, and even from my own experience, are you? I hear that. Okay. Are you saying that if you communicate or over communicate that your needs and what you want and everything like that, that there wouldn't be any um, problems down the road based on what you wanted? Because what's happening is I'm thinking in relationships that I was in, I'm communicating what I want. The woman is agreeing that she's on the same page. We commit, then we get in a relationship, and all of a sudden things start going south. And now I feel like the only option I have is then to leave. or ask her to leave. And what we're trying to do now as we're getting older is how can we keep that, what type of consequences, what type of things we can do to keep the thing in place, the relationship in place. But I can see how that could happen if you weren't communicating. But what happens if you do communicate that and your values, what you want, and the woman agrees to it, but then later flips the script?
Well, that sounds like, and maybe you can correct me if this is not the case, but it sounds like this could get to really be a reflection of a trust issue. Is it that the woman in this case gave lip service to values that you expressed as being important to you, but the truth is that she doesn't actually subscribe to those values?
Right.
And Maya Angelou said, if somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
Right.
Jesus said it a different way. A tree is known by the fruit it bears. And so you will know by the fruit that this woman shows you whether or not she actually internalizes the values that you expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And if it turns out that it's one of those situations where you express very clearly and completely the things that are important to you, and she says, yes, I agree with you, those are important to me too, and then you get into a relationship and 3 months, 6 months, a year, or 2 years later, you start to see evidence that those values are not actually there. Excuse me. Then it's time to start to question, okay, what's going on here? When we spoke some time ago, I expressed this, you expressed that you support that, but what I'm seeing now doesn't seem to agree with that. Can you help me understand what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And either she's going to say, oh, I made a mistake, that's not what I intended, or you're going to start to see there's going to be an unfolding of some different values.
Mm-hmm.
And if those differences are around things that are really honestly non-negotiable, then there's a problem that could very well end up in a divorce. So let me give you an example that happens around women a lot. A couple gets married and everything is all lovey-dovey, and then something happens in the man, and there could be a wide range of things that could be, and he starts to become physically abusive. No woman should stay in a relationship where she becomes the object of physical abuse. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is that it's not just women that can be subject to physical abuse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Men can be too, or it can be emotional abuse. Right. And women can be victims of that, and so can men. Mm-hmm. And so if that is what's unfolding in the relationship, that's one of those things that, in my view, is a red line issue. Mm-hmm. So if it moves in that direction, then some kind of corrective measure needs to be taken. Right. And maybe that corrective measure could include some kind of counseling or therapy for the individual who is the victim, or counseling or therapy for the couple together. Mm-hmm. Or it could escalate to some type of maybe temporary separation. So there's time to kind of clear the air and begin to make a distinction between what's acceptable and what's not. Right. But if it does not get remediated, yes, it could end up in a permanent breakdown of the relationship.
Right. That's good. That's good information. And I think that's good for that part of the of the abusive spectrum of relationships. But let's just say, if you have the same values in 30 years, you're still going to have conflict. You're going to have arguments. And what I'm thinking is, what's guiding staying together without, at the time you get in an argument, you may even fall out of love. You're thinking, hey, you know what? Let's just end it. When you're in the feeling of the throes of the difficulty, right? This day and age, a lot of, in the old days, people would just stay together and sacrifice. But this day and age is like, you know what? Well, if it ain't working now, let's just end it. What are some things that some men can do? You know, whether it be faith, God, or some tips, advice you can give that can allow men to stick it out, some consequences possibly for, and we're just talking about behavior. If the values are there, you still may exhibit some sort of behavior that is unacceptable. And instead of just being like, you know what, I'm out, what are some consequences or things that you have employed that have made you stay in a relationship? If you know you're with the right woman.
Right. And so I'm not sure that consequences is the right word, but strategy, approach. Sometimes the first thing that we might want to consider is that if we're really serious about being in a marriage, marriage is an institution that's bigger than people. Marriage is an institution that's put in place by God. And if we accept that as a fundamental principle, and I granted not everybody does, that's my particular value, then the going in position is not a going in position that says, if things don't go right, I'm just going to simply get out. The going in position is, if there are troubles and challenges and frustrations and anxieties and even angers and tempers and all of that, I'm going to do everything I can to resolve it short of getting out.
Okay.
And with the proviso, with the understanding that there are certain things that, as I said, are what I call red line issues, which if they can't get corrected, then ending the relationship is an appropriate solution. But sometimes it's simply a matter of allowing the situation to kind of deflate a little bit, allowing some time to say, okay, let's take some time away from whatever this issue is. It could be that there's a problem with finances, because that's something that's happening a lot in families these days with the economy and the state that it's in. It could be a difference about how to raise children or discipline the children or whatever. And sometimes it's not a matter of one spouse being right and the other spouse being wrong. It could be just a matter of, I was raised to do it this way, or my preference is to do it this way, your preference is to do it that way. And sometimes it just becomes a question of, okay, let's leave this alone for a minute. Let's have some time to just kind of let things cool. And then let's come back and have a conversation around this later. Sometimes it may be a matter of, okay, now that we've had a chance to cool down, I'm going to just listen, and I'm going to hear how you feel about this, and I'm without comment.
Gotcha.
And then after I've listened to you, I'm going to express to you what I feel without comment.
Right.
And then after we've both heard each other, then we're going to take some time and just leave it alone, and then come back and have some conversation around how we can find some common ground here that will satisfy both of us.
Right. That's a good one.
And so it's really a question of defusing the potential explosive situation long enough for a compromise to surface. Because if there is legitimate goodwill between both spouses, after I've heard her and she's heard me, then some light is going to emerge that'll say, okay, here's a way forward that satisfies both of us.
Right. Okay.
And as long as there's a commitment to the relationship in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
then we can figure a way around just about any issue that may arise.
Okay, that's good.
On the flip side, if if I go into the relationship saying, okay, if I don't like something she says, then I'm out, then it won't be long before that's what unfolds.
Right. It's not. That's not a real commitment.
It is not a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is that marriage is hard.
Right. Period.
It's work.
Yeah.
And I don't care how much in love you are before you say I do, or during the honeymoon and shortly thereafter, you are going to hit some rocky roads.
Right.
There are going to be some issues that where you're just going to not be in agreement.
Inevitable. And what I like about what you said is I had to learn late in life is that all problems don't have to be solved right now. You know, you can be emotional, both of you can be emotional, and you figure like, okay, we're going to talk until we figure this out. But it's sometimes you just need a break. Let's don't even think about it right now and just come back to it. It doesn't have to be solved right now. So that's a great point. You know,
and sometimes it's hard to resist the urge to I want it my way and I want it right now.
Right.
Because there's a lot of drive behind that.
Yeah, that's some good wisdom.
But one of the things that may seem kind of counterintuitive is sometimes the best way for a man to show his strength is by showing his restraint.
Yeah. Good one. To show his restraint. Okay. And did you have anything? I know you said you wanted to expand. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about expanding it about how to deal with conflict, marital conflict? Because after you expand on that, or we can talk about any advice you have, like just overall advice for men and how they can have a successful marriage like you've been able to have.
I think what I wanted to do is broaden just to make sure we included both men who are already in a relationship as well as those who may be contemplating a relationship, because the challenge is that the work that we have to do in order to clearly understand who I am, why I am, what my needs, strong preferences, and non-negotiables are, that's work that I do that would be best done before you even get started in the relationship. But if you are already in one, it's not too late to do it now. Take some alone time and figure out who you are, why you are, and what matters to you, so that you can be able to articulate that clearly and succinctly and share it appropriately. And in my opinion, most of us don't take enough time to do that. Okay, got you. Okay. Maybe we'll have you on another time to maybe give us some pointers on how to actually go through. So maybe you have some questions already set up to, maybe we can teach some, help you can maybe give some advice for some guys on how to go about doing that on another video or something. Well, you mentioned that I am a coach, and that is one important part of my coaching practice is about how to live strong on purpose. And when I say on purpose, it means understanding who you are in terms of what your purpose is, why you are, and how you implement who you are in a way that brings satisfaction over the course of your life. Okay, good. And what we're going to do is, this is just a taste of some of the wisdom that Coach John Banks has to offer. And if you want to have some more, a one-on-one session with him about a particular problem that you may be going through, or you just want some wisdom about a particular matter regarding life or marriage, business, whatever, I'm gonna leave his contact information in the description. And what's the best way to contact you, Coach John? Best way to contact me is by my email. The name of my practice is Inner Vision Life Coaching. And so my email is innervisionlifecoaching@gmail.com. And I monitor my email diligently. And if you reach out to me there, I will get back to you and we can set up time to have a conversation and figure out the best way for me to support whatever your goals are.
Outstanding. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But before we wrap it up, do you have any last minute tips or advice for men who are already in a marriage on how to last and maybe and be blessed to have 31 years like you've been able to have?
Well, this one might scare a few of our brothers,
Uh-oh.
but I'm going to throw it out there anyway.
Keep it real, Coach. You can keep it real on it.
Okay, so here it is.
All right.
One of the toughest things for a man to do is be accountable to another man.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And however, one of the most powerful things that a man can do is be accountable to another man, because the truth of the matter is life is full of intricacies and complexities, and none of us is perfect. None of us has it all figured out. All of us make mistakes. All of us stumble and fall. And one of the best ways that we can that we can support ourselves is by finding one other gentleman who is mature, responsible, experienced, and entering into an accountability relationship with that person. Where you can, that one of those things where you can keep it completely 100. A gentleman who you know will not mince words, who will tell you the truth.
Okay.
Even if it means telling you the truth that you do not want to hear.
Good. That's good stuff.
But that will empower you in ways that hardly anything can. In the book of Proverbs, it says that iron sharpens, in the same way that iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Wow. That's good.
And it is my belief that that is one of the most powerful things we can do. And that's the reason why the majority of my coaching practice is focused on working with men who are interested in leveraging all the power that they can in their lives, because I believe that that type of accountability is that important.
Amen. Hey, we appreciate it. That's some good advice. And if you guys want a professional accountability partner, you may not have that, a friend that you can turn to. You have Coach John Banks here. You'll have his information. Thank you so much, Coach. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Jake.
For the wisdom. And yeah, that's it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you. Oh. All right.
Wow.
Hey, that was good, huh?
That went pretty good. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm
Wow.
gonna edit that, Joker, and let me turn the
Recording on.